Dylan Wallback
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning.
and Chris Ellis.
Good morning, Your Honor.
We represent the state in today's case.
Anything further?
Yes, we have some pre-trial documents that we would like to send to the bench.
Yes.
They are the jury instructions, stipulations, order of motions in limine, the rules of evidence, the penal code, special instructions, and the Midlands case law.
That is a lot of documents. Have you seen all those?
Yes, Your Honor, I have no objection to any of them.
Wow. Fantastic, thank you. Let's hope we don't need it. Anything that y'all need, always feel free to come up and grab evidence as needed or documents.
Yes, Your Honor. And seeing as though it's the first time in your courtroom, permission to use the well freely.
That's fine. I encourage it.
Do we need to ask for permission to approach the opposing counsel, the bench, or the witness?
This is where I may be different than other judges, but generally no, unless you feel that your counterpart is abusing that process. There's really no need to ask for permission for anything.
And lastly, at this time, we would like to vote Rule 615, the constructive sequestration of all witnesses, except for our party representative. Our party representative today will be Officer Mickey Keenan.
Morning, Your Honor.
One officer. Any representative from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor, the defendant in today's case, Mr. Avery Bancroft.
All right, and I imagine then that there's no objection on 615.
No, Your Honor.
Great. So we're
With that, we are ready to proceed.
fantastic. Anything from the defense before we get going?
Yes, Your Honor, may we also make appearances before the court?
Please do.
Good morning, Your Honor, my name is Celia Palermo, and on behalf of the defense, I'm joined by my co-counsel, Ms. Skylar Martin. Good morning. And Mr. Austin Hardaway.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And we represent Mr. Avery Bancroft, the defendant in today's proceedings.
Good morning, Your Honor.
And seeing that, we actually have no other pretrial matters, and we're ready to proceed as well.
Excellent. Very efficient. All right. Let's keep going with opening statements then.
Yes, Your Honor.
Open market, you need a minute just or whatever.
Oh, wait a minute.
Dylan Wallback from the state. Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, it was his choice. On October 1st, the Midlands Gambling Commission made available a license for a new casino. Now, this is always a highly contested event, as only one of these every decade are made available. The winner was the defendant, Mr. Bancroft. He's the owner of the Black Bear Casino in Midlands, as a businessman in Midlands. And he won this license by getting the vote of the Gambling Commission head. And he did so by bribing that commissioner $200,000. He's already admitted to that. But now Mr. Bancroft is saying that he did so because he was entrapped by a government agent. He's saying that government agent pressured him into committing that bribery. He's saying that government agent took away his choice. But what you'll be hearing in trial today is that government agent simply presented Mr. Bancroft with an opportunity to show his true colors. And Mr. Bancroft did. Mr. Bancroft made his choice. And that choice was to bribe a government official. As a prosecution in today's case, we bear the burden of proof. We have to prove that Avery Bancroft was predispositioned to commit bribery before Mickey Keenan ever came into play, government official. And predisposition simply means that the choice was made by Mr. Bancroft's own free will, that no one forced him to do so, that it was his choice. And to do so, I'm going to bring 3 witnesses before you today in trial. The first is Ms. Devin Del Sesta, who's a bellhop at the Black Bear Casino, Mr. Bancroft's casino. And she'll tell you about meetings and interactions between Mr. Bancroft and the Gambling Commission head. And she'll tell you that the government agent was not present during any of these, that it was just Mr. Bancroft and the commission head. The second witness will be Mr. Keenan himself, the government agent who's being accused of entrapment. And he'll before even tell you that he did his job by the book, that he was trained to do undercover operations and that he did it as he was supposed to do, that he simply gave Mr. Bancroft an opportunity to make a choice, and that Mr. Bancroft made that choice by his own free will. And the last witness will be F. Reese Warren, who was a linguist. And after he's sworn, will come before you and tell you that Mr. Mickey Keenan followed the best practices of the Midlands Police Department and that he did his job by the book. And at the end of trial, my co-counsel Jaleesa Harris will come before you and ask you to find the defendant guilty. It was her choice. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Any statement from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. Today, you will meet Mr. Avery Bancroft, a hard-working business owner from our community. All he wanted to do was expand his business. All he wanted was a fair deal. But members of the jury, he was forced to play by the rules of someone else's game. In April of this year, Mr. Bancroft submitted a proposal to get a new casino license from the Midlands Gambling Commission. His only intention, to bring another quality casino to the people of Midlands. But members of the jury, corruption got in the way of that. But not the corruption of Mr. Bancroft, as the state would have you believe. No. The only corrupt member in all of this is Officer Keenan. Today, we're taking on an affirmative defense of entrapment. This means that we're contending that Officer Keenan induced Mr. Bancroft to commit this crime when he would not have otherwise. Now, to put that simply, we're contesting that Mr. Keenan caused this crime to happen, that his presence, his actions, is what was the cause of this crime, that Mr. Bancroft would not have bribed Miss Covington otherwise. Now, we must prove beyond a preponderance of the evidence that it's more likely than not that Mr. Bancroft was induced. We will show you today that Mr. Keenan pressured Mr. Bancroft into giving this bribe to Miss Covington. We'll show you today that Mr. Bancroft was given no option. The prosecution also has a burden. In fact, they carry the heaviest burden. They carry the highest standard in our judicial system. They must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Bancroft was predisposed to commit this crime. They must show you today that without the intervention of Mr. Keenan or his informant, Corey Hyde, that Mr. Bancroft would have still bribed Miss Covington. Members of the jury, they have, up until Officer Keenan plants the idea of a bribe in the mind of Mr. Bancroft to prove to you that he was predisposed. After that, they have failed to meet their burden, and it is your responsibility to return a verdict of not guilty. At the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Celia Palermo, will come before you, and she'll tell you again how Mr. Bancroft was forced to play by the rules of someone else's game. And she'll ask you to return a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel.
This time, Your Honor, the state wishes to call Devin Del Sesto to the witness stand.
Ms. Del Sesto.
Chris Ellis on behalf of the state. Permission to proceed, Your Honor.
Sure, Mr. Ellis.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please introduce yourself, spelling your last name for the record.
My name is Devin Del Sesto. That's Delsesto.
And tell the members of the jury a little bit about yourself.
Well, in my spare time, I volunteer at the animal shelter. I once went to a seminar that taught me the greatest way to find inner peace is through service to others. And after that, I just found that I really love to help people. So I guess that's how I ended up as a bellhop at Avery Bancroft Casino, the Black Bear.
And what do you do as a bellhop?
Well, pretty much anything it takes to keep the casino running smoothly. I take towels to the pool, room service up to guests, take their luggage up. I can even identify how much someone will tip just based on their luggage, which I think is a pretty impressive skill.
Now, you mentioned Avery Bancroft. Who is that?
Avery Bancroft is my boss. He's the owner of the Black Bear Casino, and he recently proposed to the Gambling Commission for a second casino license.
How do you know that?
I overheard him talking about it a few times.
And what did he say?
Well, it was February 16th, the weekend after Valentine's Day, and I was valeting cars. Mr. Bancroft came up and asked me about my weekend, which is, a little nerve-wracking talking to the boss sometimes. But luckily I was saved by the bell when his cell phone rang, and he turned away and said, "Thanks for calling me back. I'm putting the proposal together, and I really want to get this done. If you are for sale, I am willing to pay the price, whatever it is. I just really want to get this sorted out."
Do you see Avery Bancroft in this courtroom today?
Yes, he's the gentleman over there in the navy suit.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness has correctly identified the defendant in this case.
Objection to that?
No objection, Your Honor.
Mr. Ortman.
Now, you mentioned the Gambling Commission. Do you know who's on the commission board?
Yes, I know it's comprised of 3 members, but I only know one of them, Chase Covington. She would come into the in the VIP room at the casino quite often.
And you've said you've heard about this proposal a few times. When was the next time?
The next time was April 13th. I had just gotten off a little long shift at work, but I decided to stick around because the kitchen was pretty busy, and I decided to see if they needed any help. They did. There was a wine and cheese plate going up to room 312, so I brought it up, and I was met at the door by the head of security, Danny Hoy, which I thought was pretty strange. I didn't know why he'd be guarding the door like a bouncer at a club. But when I walked inside the room to deliver the food, having a meeting where Avery Bancroft, his assistant, Corey Hyde, Chase Covington, and Mickey Keenan.
And did you happen to overhear anything at this meeting?
Well, when I walked in, Chase Covington was holding up this radio briefcase and gesturing to it. She said, "I'd also like a new one of these."
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay?
Counsel, do you have a response to that?
Your Honor, we are not using the statement for truth of the matter asserted. We are using it as a subsequent action. We don't care that, if I may proffer.
Yeah, please.
Okay, she will tell you that we're talking about a briefcase here. We don't care that Covington wanted a new briefcase, but rather we want to prove that after hearing the statement, Bancroft then decided to order a briefcase.
All right, I'll let you respond to that.
I do believe that they're using the statement for the truth of the matter asserted. Furthermore, it's an out-of-court statement, therefore it's still hearsay.
Why is it being offered for the truth of the matter, though? They just gave you a good reason why it's not.
Because saying that he needed a new briefcase is the truth of the matter asserted because the briefcase is essential to the charge in today's case.
I'll give you one last crack at it. I'll give you the last word, I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't ruled yet.
Your Honor, this is not truth of the matter asserted. The briefcase is not the heart of this case. We are trying to prove that Mickey Keenan did not pressure Avery Bancroft into committing this bribe, and this will help lay out the circumstances under which this bribe happened. And if Mickey Keenan was not there when this bribe happened, then it is more likely than not that Mickey Keenan did not pressure Avery Bancroft.
I'll allow it for now.
All right, and I'm gonna repeat that question one more time. And what happened, what did you overhear at this meeting?
Well, when I walked in, Chase Covington was holding up this radio briefcase and gesturing to it. She said, "I'd also like a new one of these," if you catch my drift.
And so what happened after this meeting?
Well, a few days later, my boss, Avery Bancroft, got a package in the mail, and it didn't look like much, but it's my job to screen all of his mail, make sure no spam or junk ends up on his desk. When I opened the package, it was a briefcase that looked almost identical to the one Chase Covington had in the meeting a few days earlier, but newer, of course.
And what did you do with this briefcase?
I left it on my boss's desk. He wasn't there at the time, but I thought it was very strange that a few days later, I saw Chase Covington with a briefcase that looked exactly like that one.
And how do you know that?
Well, I had just gotten off of another long day at work, and excuse me, I heard there was someone pretty big in the VIP room, so I thought I'd take a stroll by. Sometimes some pretty big celebrities come through Midlands, and it's always pretty exciting when that happens, so I like to see them. But when I got to the VIP room, it was pretty much empty. I saw Avery Bancroft and Chase Covington playing blackjack, I believe. I'm not too good with those card games. At the center table of the VIP room, but I thought it was strange that there was the briefcase at their sides.
Did they both have briefcases, or did you just see one?
They both had briefcases. Next to Chase Covington was her old dingy one from that meeting, and right beside that was the newer one that I had delivered to Avery Bancroft.
And what happened, was that the last time you saw any of those Avery Bancroft or Chase Covington that day?
No, later that day I saw Chase Covington in the lobby with what looked like the newer briefcase.
Was this the same briefcase that Covington had on the meeting on April 13th?
No, that one was all old and tattered. The leather was cracking and the handles almost looked like they were going to fall off. This briefcase was a lot newer.
When did this all happen?
This was April 16th, the day before the Gambling Commission voted in favor of Avery Bancroft's new casino proposal.
On April 16th, did you see Mickey Keenan with Avery Bancroft and Chase Covington?
No, I did not.
And while working at the Black Bear, did you ever see Mickey Keenan pressure Avery Bancroft?
No, I've never even seen a negative interaction between the two. It seemed like they were friends.
And did you ever hear Mickey Keenan threaten Avery Bancroft into giving Chase, or did you ever hear Mickey Keenan tell Avery Bancroft to give Chase Covington money?
No, I've never heard anything like that.
All right, thank you. No more further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counsel. Prosecutor?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Delso. I'm just going to be asking you a few questions today. All right. Now, you work at the Black Bear Casino with Mr. Bancroft, is that right?
I work for Mr. Bancroft, yes.
And you're a bellhop?
Yes, I am.
And part of that job required you to give room service, is that right?
Yes, it did.
And so around 3 p.m. on April 13th, you went to room 312 to deliver room service, is that right?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
And you were searched by Danny Hooley?
Yeah, he looked like he wanted to like strip search me almost. It was kind of crazy.
Whenever you went into the room, you were greeted by Mickey Keenan.
Yes, I was.
And Mickey Keenan gave you a large tip,
Yes, I was very grateful for that.
and then he introduced you to everyone in the room.
Well, I already knew my boss, Avery Bancroft, and Corey Hyde, but yes, he made a formal introduction.
And then I'd like to talk about April 15th. You found a briefcase that day.
I didn't find it. It was delivered to my boss, Avery Bancroft.
And you took that briefcase to Mr. Bancroft's office.
Yes, but he wasn't there.
And when you went back to the lobby, you saw Mr. Bancroft speaking with Mr. Keenan, didn't you?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
And whenever you went back to the lobby after delivering the briefcase to Mr. Bancroft's office, you found Mr. Keenan and Mr. Bancroft speaking together.
Yes, I did.
And you overheard them say something about getting the job done.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Objection, hearsay.
Also, Counsel.
Your Honor, they're using this is an out-of-court statement being used to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
What is the matter asserted?
The matter asserted is they are trying to prove that, may I consult with co-counsel?
Have at it, yeah, that's why they're agreeing here.
Your Honor, they're trying to use this statement to say that Mickey Keenan was forced to do something. Mickey Keenan being forced to do something is the heart of this case. That is the truth of the matter, sir.
Counsel, give your response to that.
Your Honor, we're using the statement to prove subsequent action on the listener, Avery Bancroft, to prove that he did go through with the bribe under the influence of Mickey Keenan.
Yeah, I think it's more closely what the defense is offering it as a lie.
So you overheard them say something about getting the job done.
Yes, but I wasn't sure what they were talking about.
And now I'd like to turn to that April 16th. You had mentioned on direct that you had come off of a really long work shift.
Yes, I had. I often work pretty long shifts at the casino. It's a pretty normal thing for me.
As a matter of fact, you had only received about 30 minutes of sleep that night before.
Yes, but as I said, that was a pretty normal night for me.
Right. And so you said that you would swear on your life that a briefcase exchange happened between Avery Bancroft and Chase Covington on April 16th.
Well, I saw Chase Covington with what looked to be exactly the briefcase I had delivered to Avery Bancroft, so yes.
And you would swear on your life that a briefcase exchange happened.
Yes, I guess I would.
But you were so tired that you can't even tell us what time you saw Avery Bancroft or Chase Covington that day.
No, but like I said, that was a pretty normal night for me.
As a matter of fact, you said that you were walking around on April 16th like a zombie.
Yes, I did.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Fair enough. Can you redirect Mr. Ellis?
Your Honor, no further redirects at this time.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Del Sesto. Any further proof from the state?
Yes, Your Honor, this time, state calls Mickey Keenan to the stand.
All speaking.
Dylan Ballback for the state, may I proceed? Please state your name, spelling your last for the record.
Hello, my name is Mickey Keenan. That's K-E-E-N-A-N.
What do you do for a living?
I work as an undercover detective in the Special Investigations Division of the Midland State Police Department.
Now, Detective Keenan, what makes a special investigations division different than other departments in the unit?
Well, what really separates our department from other ones is the number of cases that we have to go undercover for.
And were you provided with training to take this part?
Yes, sir. We went through very rigorous training.
And would you mind describing that training for us today?
No, not at all. It was so extensive it's impossible to forget. We went over everything that you could think of about proper documentation, how to properly use the read technique, how to properly handle OIAs, and how to avoid incriminating innocent parties.
Mr. Keenan, do you know if there was documentation of this training?
Yes, sir. Everybody who goes through training has documentation.
Do you know of any reason why that training would be private to the public?
Well, as of today, I'm actually undercover, so all of my documentation is held very private.
Detective Keenan, how many cases have you worked in the past undercover?
I would say probably 10 or 11 by now. If you include this Bancroft Covington case, yeah, that sounds about right.
Would you mind telling us some of the cases you worked undercover in the past?
No, not at all. I've busted the full spectrum of scumbags, from human trafficking to the infamous Midlands peyote ring of '96. But throughout it all, my mission remains the same, to protect and serve the people of Midlands.
Earlier you mentioned names Bancroft and Covington. Would you mind telling us your involvement with them?
No, they were the suspects in my latest case. I've been working at the Gambling Commission since 2013.
Detective Keenan, why were you investigating them?
Well, at the beginning I wasn't trying to investigate either of them, but the Gambling Commission itself. because for years the department has been getting tips of corruption within the Gambling Commission. So I went undercover to see if I could find it, or make any sense of it.
Did you find any corruption between Mr. Bancroft and Ms. Covington?
Oh yes, I did.
How so?
Well, I'd like to start from the beginning if that's all right with you.
Not at all, Mr. Keenan. Go ahead and tell us how this all began.
Well, I would say it began when the Gambling Commission announced they would be accepting proposals and would vote on those proposals for a new casino in Midlands.
Were either Mr. Bancroft or Ms. Covington part of this commission?
Yes, sir. In fact, Chase Covington was the head of the Gambling Commission.
And what kind of responsibility came with that?
He held a very powerful position at the Gambling Commission.
And what do you mean?
Well, the other two people on the Gambling Commission always voted opposite, as they did in today's case, which left Chase Covington in the ultimate swing vote position.
So with this knowledge in hand, how do you proceed with your investigation?
Well, that is when I was placed on the staff at the commission to see if I could find any corruption in the voting process.
To be clear, did Avery Bancroft play any part in joining Mr. Covington's staff?
No, of course not. I had been on the case for over a year and a half before Avery Bancroft even showed up.
So how did Avery Bancroft come into play then?
I overheard a conversation between Chase Covington and Avery Bancroft. Well, actually, it was a phone call, not a conversation.
When did that conversation occur?
It occurred on February 13th, 2015. I was in Covington's office when Bancroft called him.
Did you hear what was said during this conversation?
Yes, I did. Covington actually put it on speakerphone, and Bancroft said, "I heard the announcement about a new casino. I'm putting together a proposal, and I'd like to talk to you about it to, grease the wheels," as he put it.
How did Ms. Covington respond to this?
Her tone definitely changed. She became really harsh and immediately hung up before Bancroft could continue talking.
Well, Detective Keenan, where did you take your investigation from there?
That would be when I recruited the help of Corey Hyde, Avery Bancroft's executive assistant. He was in charge of setting up all the meetings for Avery Bancroft. That's how I was able to sit in on a meeting between Chase Covington and Avery Bancroft.
When did that meeting occur?
That meeting occurred on April 13th.
Would you mind telling us who was at that meeting?
Chase Covington, Avery Bancroft, myself, and Corey Hyde were all at that meeting.
Detective Keenan, how did that meeting begin?
Well, it began as usual. We just talked about the proposal, but that's when Ms. Covington started talking about money. That's when Avery Bancroft said, "Of course, it's always about the money with you."
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Bancroft is our party opponent in today's case, meaning that his statements pursuant to 801D2 are admissible in court today.
Sounds like a counsel response.
Your Honor, it's still an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. He's offering it to show that this was about the money for Mr. Bancroft, and it's still being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, regardless of if he's a party opponent or not.
Yeah, but it's defined as not hearsay under 801D2. I'll allow it.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, sir.
How did that April 13th meeting begin?
It began as usual, as I said. We talked about the proposal, and then Ms. Covington started asking questions about money, and that's when Mr. Bancroft said, "Of course, it's always about the money with you."
And how did Ms. Covington respond?
Ms. Covington,
Mr. Keenan, what happened?
that's when I picked up a napkin and a pen and handed it to Mr. Bancroft and repeated his own words, "It's always about the money."
And what did Mr. Bancroft do with that napkin, Detective Keenan?
Mr. Bancroft then picked up the pen and wrote on the napkin, "Yes equals 150K," and passed it to Ms. Covington.
And how did Ms. Covington respond to this gesture?
Ms. Covington looked at the napkin and slid it back to Mr. Bancroft. That's when Mr. Bancroft immediately crossed out the 150K and wrote 250K in its place. So the napkin read, "Yes equals," across that 150K, 250K next to it, and then slid it back to Covington. Covington then swiftly picked up the napkin and placed it in her pocket.
Now, I'd like to make something clear. You did not pressure Mr. Bancroft into writing anything on that napkin.
No, of course not.
Would you recognize this napkin if it was presented to you in court today?
Yes, sir, I would.
Let the record reflect the conversation with the counsel, was referred to as prosecution one.
So
And the witness with the same. What I saying?
This is the napkin that Mr. Bancroft was writing on in the meeting.
This is a fair and accurate copy.
Affirmative.
Prosecution moves to admit prosecution wanted evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, we have no idea who wrote these statements, therefore there's a lack of foundation.
Counsel,
Please.
Your Honor, we clearly laid the foundation that Mr. Bancroft wrote the 150K, and then Chase Covington crossed that out and wrote 250K. Mr. Detective Keenan just testified to that.
And he observed that personally.
Yes, Your Honor, he was in that meeting.
Counsel?
Your Honor, we've heard that this was written on a napkin, we didn't lay foundation that it's this specific napkin. We have no idea who wrote these statements, so it's unauthentic.
Did you just ask, is this the napkin, or did
Yes,
am I making
that's
that
a very accurate copy.
I tell you, why don't we verify that this is in fact the napkin that was being used? Assuming you can get that out of Officer Keenan, the document will be admitted.
Thank you.
Sorry. And is this the napkin that was written on that day?
Yes, sir, it is.
Once again, prosecution moves to admit prosecution wanted evidence.
Pursuant to my previous ruling.
Yes, Your Honor, no objection.
It's admitted.
Permission to attend the bench.
That would be me. Thank you.
So, did anything else happen after that during the meeting?
There was then a knock at the door. Devin Del Sesto, who had testified earlier, was there. She was delivering a wine and cheese platter that I had ordered before the meeting had begun.
And how did Chase Covington respond to someone entering the room?
Chase became very wide-eyed, like a deer in headlights.
And how did Mr. Bancroft respond to Ms. Covington's concerns?
Mr. Bancroft reassured Ms. Covington that there was no need to be worried because the people at the Black Bear Casino knew how to be discreet.
Were you part of any other meetings between Mr. Bancroft and Ms. Covington?
I was supposed to, but Chase Covington never showed up. It was supposed to be on April 16th.
Now, Mr. Keenan, do you know why you're here today?
Yes, Avery Bancroft believes that I pressured him into committing a bribe.
How do you respond to that?
I absolutely did not. I have been with the police department for a very long time, and in that time I have had no incidents. I do my job effectively, and I do it to the best of my ability by the books.
And how would you say that you did your job by the books in today's case?
I was on this case for over 2 years, and in that time I never entrapped that man into doing anything. I never forced him to break any laws. It was his own free will. It was his choice.
No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Cross-examination, Ms. Palermo.
Yes, Your Honor. Nancy?
Please.
Good morning, Vicki Keenan. I'm going to ask you a few questions today. I'd like to talk about your involvement in today's case. When you first took on the case, you heard rumors that Mr. Bancroft was willing to pad the pockets to get his casino approved.
Well, I had been working at the Gambling Commission for about a year and a half before. Well, I had been hearing the rumors for about a year and a half before Avery Bancroft showed up.
But you had absolutely no evidence that these rumors were true, right?
No, not yet.
Because up until 2015, Mr. Bancroft hadn't even shown interest in applying for a new casino.
Well, there wasn't a proposal to apply for it.
Objection to character evidence, Your Honor.
Continue.
They're trying to imply that because he did not show interest in the past, that he would not do so in the future without coercion by Mickey Keenan.
Admittedly, I was writing a comment at the time, a very important note at the trial. Can you please agree on what the question and answer was? I apologize.
I asked the question about these rumors that he had heard, and up until 2015, Mr. Bancroft hadn't actually shown interest in applying for a casino at the time.
Okay. And your witness's answer? Or did we not get that far?
We did not get that far, Your Honor.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. Response then to counsel's objection.
Your Honor, I'm not using this for action in conformity therewith, that he wasn't interested before and therefore wouldn't be interested again, rather to show that he believed these rumors that Mr. Bancroft was willing to pad the pockets should an opportunity to apply for a new casino arise.
Can I respond?
Please.
And they're trying to imply that because Mr. Keenan had heard those rumors, that Mr. Keenan was trying to coerce Bancroft into committing the bribe.
This is a hard one. I'll give you a redirect on it, but I'll allow it for now just because it's cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please.
Just to ask you that again, before 2015, Mr. Bancroft hadn't actually shown interest in applying for a casino yet.
Well, there was no proposal to apply interest to.
Let's move on and talk about your relationship with Corey Hyde. You believed you could use your relationship with Corey Hyde to gain leverage on your investigation.
Yes, I did.
So you actually lied to Corey Hyde and told her that you could threaten jail time for her if she didn't help you out.
Yes, ma'am, I did do that.
But that wasn't true, right?
No, I did not have any physical evidence on her.
Exactly. You had no evidence that she had ever broken the law.
No, I didn't.
So let's move on and talk about that meeting you mentioned on April 13th of 2015. Yourself, Mr. Bancroft, Ms. Covington, and Corey Hyde were present at that meeting.
Yes, they were.
And during that meeting, you actually gave Mr. Bancroft a note, or a napkin and a black pen, right?
Yes, I did.
And you said it's all about the money.
Yeah, I repeated Avery Bancroft's words.
But initially, Mr. Bancroft just wiped his forehead with this napkin, right?
Yes, he did.
So you gave him another one.
Yes, I did.
And after this meeting, Corey Hyde was feeling a little bit antsy about continuing working with you.
Well, it was her boss.
Objection to relevance, Your Honor, may be heard. Whether Mr. Bancroft's assistant felt any nerves about working with Mr. Keenan is not relevant to anything about entrapment or predisposition.
Maybe heard on the screen? Your Honor, the bar for relevance is extremely low in today's case. And whether Mr. Bancroft's assistant was feeling nervous about helping Mr. Keenan is absolutely relevant to show that even she felt uncomfortable working with an undercover officer.
Can I explain that?
Yes.
Unless they can tie Mr. Hyde's nervousness back to either Mr. Keenan or Mr. Bancroft, it's completely irrelevant to today's case.
Tell you what I'll do, counsel, I'll give you one more bite of the apple if you want to amend your objection, but on relevance grounds, I'm going to, I would overrule.
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have anything else that you might want to object to?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to amend my objection to character evidence.
Yeah, overrule. Please.
I'll repeat that question. At this time in your investigation, Ms. Hyde was feeling nervous about working with you.
Yes, she was. I would imagine nobody likes to go against the boss like that.
But again, you threatened her with jail time if she quit working with you.
Yes, I did. Before that, she was actually very helpful with the investigation. She was actually very willing to help me.
Mr. Keenan, again, this was a lie. You couldn't threaten jail time on her.
I can threaten jail time. It doesn't mean I have any proof of it though.
She hadn't broken the law.
No, she hadn't.
So again, you lied to her so that she would continue working with you.
Yes, I did.
So let's move on and talk about April 16th. You were supposed to meet with Mr. Covington, or Ms. Covington and Mr. Bancroft that day, right?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Covington didn't show up.
No,